Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining this webinar. As you will know, the National Enabling Programme achieved its final and full milestone link last week when it actually closed after successfully delivering the outcomes and objectives set out back in 2017. As we brought the NEP team together, in the same place for the first time, I actually met colleagues I've been working with for 2 years and hadn't actually met physically. We wanted to ensure we captured everything we could from the learning, from the reflections about what it took to deliver this successful programme in the way that we did, in partnership with policing. And I think that's the important point. It wasn't the programme did it to policing, we did it with policing. So we brought all the stakeholders together, and what we've done is take up in your feedback, your reflections yourself through the surveys we've done, and we brought that all together into today's session, which is aimed to help police forces, other change programmes, the PDS, all other programmes who are facing change and want to deliver it, to listen to what we went through in the NEP, what we changed, what worked well, what didn't work well, why we changed and adapted the way we did, to bring it all together in a session, and we'll be sharing quite a bit of detail today. So first of all, we're going to bring in Lisa Lee in a second, but unfortunately Lisa can't be with us today. So in typical fashion, we've recorded her session live through Teams, and we'll play that back to you in a second so you can understand and take you through a presentation, which is an adaptation of what we presented to the NEP board, but also a number of other audiences over the last few weeks to take us through what our reflections were. So let's hear from Lisa for the next few minutes.
As you well have known, the National Enabling Programme has been running now for several years and was launched in 2017 to help police forces across England and Wales to transform the way that they work, collaborate and deliver key change in a consistent, secure and trusted way in accordance with the Policing Vision 2025. Its objective was to deliver the following 3 national solutions on behalf of the National Police Technology Council, which is the National Management Centre, Identity Access Management Platform and Productivity Services. Those solutions were underpinned by 3 equally important supporting streams: security and risk management, business change and benefits management. So following some feedback, following the launch of the programme in 2017, we commissioned a review of the programme, and in particular how it was approaching delivery and how we could improve the delivery and the support being provided to policing. At this time, progress had stalled and forces were struggling to achieve projected milestones. The force's faith in our delivery was becoming very, very low. As a result of the independent review, key changes were made to the delivery and how we approached the financial year 2021. The delivery and the PMO was brought in-house. We had a change in our governance approach. We developed a new NEP team, primarily based around personnel and colleagues from policing that understood how policing operated, and most importantly were able to flex and apply their own knowledge to the approach to make sure that the support that we were providing was realistic and achievable. In addition to this, we changed our approach around the SRM and primarily again applied the right criteria with the right personnel to try and help to make progress. All of us know that in March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic triggered an immediate need to work from home and a need for a rapid adoption of Microsoft Teams to effectively manage our police operations. Forces weren't equipped to meet the requirement of remote working, and immediate support was required to help for the forces' need. If it wasn't for the designs that were in place and already established, you would have seen very quickly a bespoke approach and forces doing individual activity to try and meet this need. What we were able to do is act quickly to develop a suitable way to support the force requirements while still remaining consistent and still trying to align where possible to the designs that were already in play. In just over a month, we were able to support 16 forces into a supported, accelerated position and enable them to work and meet their operating requirements. In total, over a period of a couple of months, over 50% of forces were supported in meeting their requirements and more importantly, that immediate demand to work remotely. So as a result of this change in our approach, these diagrams here, these illustrations demonstrate to you the change and the shift in progress that what was made. So would indicate just by looking at the charts that change in approach did seem to trigger a positive progress, and most importantly enabled us to work with policing in a way that made the progress that needed to make. It was very evident that the requirement around COVID triggered an enthusiasm and appetite to understand this functionality more, and more importantly, to move forces back to a position where they were able to become compliant, but most importantly, to be able to continue to operate while still in a COVID pandemic environment. The delivery model that we developed as a result of that review continued to evolve, and we worked with forces in differing positions. It became very apparent that the forces with the less resource assigned were struggling with their ability to make the progress that was needed, but we worked hard to see where we could adapt and help them ourselves. We were never afraid to change our approach, and if what worked last month was no longer working, then we would look to see why, and then we would change it. Capturing force milestones and progress against these milestones through a project plan was used for each and every force, and we were able to constantly report on forces' position in a consistent way. The position of the programme as it came to a close was as is illustrated in this slide. So you'll see from the chart that there is the Met Police are in a bespoke position. This is a force that were well ahead of the programme with regards to their adoption, and as a result, again, we've shown the ability to adapt our approach to work with this force to enable them to move forward. So moving on to what the programme has had the opportunity to reflect on, and most importantly to share with you what we think is our lessons that we've learned and what we've managed to achieve and obtain from running a national programme successfully. We've gathered feedback from you as stakeholders. We took the time to send a survey, and we are very grateful that we saw a large proportion of responses come back very quickly, which enabled us to understand exactly your thoughts on how we approached the programme and whether you saw it as a success, just like we did with regards to our achievement against our milestones. We also looked at the Chaucer community feedback, and this is something that we've monitored throughout the programme. And those of you that will recall in the early days of the programme, we were not in the position that we see ourselves today. We were often with orange and ambers and reds across the board, but as a result of the changes that we made, that survey started to turn green, and we are confident, pleased with the fact that that green survey response is exactly where we have been for the last 6 months or more, and actually maintaining that has been something that's been very difficult, but we're pleased to say that we've managed to do that. And that goes back to the point that even if it was working that got us to that green position, what do we need to do to continue to adapt and change to support that and maintain that position? The information that we gathered from you, I will run through over the next couple of slides, but it's really important that you understand that any of this feedback, anything that we've learned, is available for you and any other national programme that is either in flight or, you know, it becomes a new programme moving forward. We want to continue with the NEP ethos, and we want that to continue within other programmes. So if I look at the survey results that's come from you as our stakeholders and our policing community, majority of the responses that we had from you were positive, but on the whole, there were a number of observations that you shared with us that we are very pleased to have received, because we know we don't always get this right. And whilst we've had a positive result, we recognise that there's still room for improvement or some changes that could still be made. So I think the most important thing to indicate also is some people would reflect a negative response, but other forces may respond in the same answer but with a positive slide to it. So what I mean by that is that some people felt that there were too many methods of communication we used. We used Teams, we used email, we used a number of methods that not everybody appreciated that was the best approach to make. But yet other forces, as you would expect in a survey, felt that was a positive. They felt that actually the ability and the openness and sharing of information that we did through social media, through Teams channels and so on, was a real positive for them to be able to pick up the information that they needed to do. But most importantly, we built a relationship with policing, and we had dedicated SPOC officers that were available whenever a force needed to ask a question. And if this wasn't something they were able to answer, then we would ensure that the answer was found. What we pride ourselves with the programme is that policing is now helping policing. Over the period of time that we saw through the programme, a lot of activity was very much held within a police force, but now as we come to the end of the programme, we see policing keen to help each other. Forces want to share what they've done. They're proud of what they've done, and they recognise the benefit by sharing it with another force, what that brings. And vice versa, many forces that are doing that have also received the benefit of watching, learning or understanding what another force has done to enable them to gain some progress where perhaps they wouldn't done if they've had to do it on their own. Third-party suppliers I've already mentioned. So this was an area that we decided that we needed the policing knowledge on the programme to help us achieve what we wanted to achieve. Insufficient guidance is something that we continue to improve on, and the ability now to share information through the solutions catalogue, the website, all of that is fully enriched with information now for all forces to use and benefit on their own where they see fit. If I moved on to some of the things that went well. Our workshops and webinars. This is a webinar. This is one of the last webinars that we're running in connection with the NEP, but as it moves into PDS, the Wednesday webinar, if you like, will continue, but we will broaden the spectrum of what those webinars will cover. We have multidiscipline delivery teams that were available, so we would deal with our customer queries as well as understanding what both the programme and the customers required, and then we work collectively to make that happen. The survey results, as you can imagine, were pretty broad, and this is a summary of what we felt went well, and this summarised the general response, recognising that we couldn't reflect every survey result in these slides, but nonetheless this is the general pattern that we saw as a result. What can we share with you? The most important thing, what can the NEP leave for that you can continue to build on, and more importantly continue with the ethos that the NEP have managed to achieve. In everything we've done, we've been consistent with our approach. We've had that wrap around of the credibility and trust with a foundation of proactively listening and acting in any different way that was required to meet the requirements in the community. We have one-to-one meetings, we created stakeholder groups, we had Wednesday webinars, and we were bringing other interested parties as and when it was required. If we saw a trend that was happening and there was a trend of requirements, we would look to see who we could bring in, what expert we could bring in to try and help policing to achieve what they needed to do. This demonstrates the three key ingredients from an engagement point of view. We were persistently consistent, and what that means is that we never swayed from the approach that we had, that the principles, the objectives of the programme never changed, but our approach to try and achieve it did. We've done this with you, not for you, and the most important thing is we've achieved everything we set out to achieve. The project approach, we were clear, we were defined with our the approach, and most importantly the centralised approach meant that everybody had the same service from us, but more importantly we're achieving the same goals. There is still a lot to do. The full rollout approved position is a key milestone and a really good position to be in, but the wider adoption, the rollout and those sort of things that now comes with the approval are still yet to be accomplished by all of the policing community. And that's where PDS now will continue with that. They will continue to support and continue to help you to achieve, and most importantly, get that ability to get the best out of your investment. The most important thing that we believe that we've done is developed a delivery model that works. That delivery model, as I previously mentioned, has had to evolve, but we have a delivery model now that we feel we can share, and most importantly we can share that with you so you can utilise it, you can adapt it, you can take bits from it that you think you want to, but the most important thing is it has a very good model that can be utilised by any national programme moving forward, with wherever they need to change or adapt it. So it's with that, there is a closure report. There is a closure report available, which we are more than happy to share with anyone that would like to read it. It's been shared with the policing community, but it's a report that is available for anyone to see. It's a long report. There are some summary slides that we can also provide with it, and the artifacts in the delivery model can be provided in due course. So that just leaves me to say thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for working with this national programme, and enjoy the rollout of the functionality as you achieve it.
Wayne, would you like to add anything to that as our programme director?
Yeah, thank you, David, and grateful for Lisa taking us through the kind of detail there. Sad in many ways that NEP is coming to an end, but every good programme has a beginning, a middle and an end, you know, and I think we've you know, Lisa's gone through trying to draw it to a close in the professional manner that we've delivered the programme, but really wanted to reiterate Lisa's comments at the end there. Thanks to all the forces engagement, because, you know, obviously setting this up centrally, all the benefits are driven out locally. We couldn't have done it without the engagement, the challenge, the feedback from all the forces that, you know, in the position we're in now, a really strong position of a platform we can exploit to make us more efficient and effective right across policing. And I've used it a few times now, but my Churchill quote that this is not the end, it's the end of the beginning. And that's really important, I think, because we've got something really powerful now. Just because NEP has finished, that doesn't mean to say that we don't carry on driving this. As all those services transition into PDS, the support is still there. You know, we really need to drive hard to get the most out of the investment we make with Microsoft, and there are still so many opportunities to drive out some great stuff for policing and protecting people from harm in the communities we serve. So back to you, David. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. So there's a couple of reflections. We've had a couple of nice comments in there. Well done to the NEP. One of the questions is this, I think you just covered it, Wayne, was about, do you think we should have had a fourth milestone around adoption? And I think that's now the challenge for forces, isn't it, as we move forward?
It certainly is, because we've just got to keep driving on now, and you know the sport is going to be there from PDS as that capability builds now, and a number of familiar faces will have transitioned over to PDS now. But yeah, I think we just need to keep driving hard now. And there was a long debate about, should we keep the program going? You know, should we add more milestones and that kind of stuff? But you know, I think it's really important to get to the goals of the program where we started and move on, David.
Thank you. And just thinking about the areas that have really adopted the 365 approach and the change approach that have benefited. Mike, you've done an awful lot of work with the L&D community. How's the L&D community embraced the opportunity to implement the 365 and the NEP approach?
Thank you, David and Wayne, and hi everyone. Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think if we look back to the events prior to 2020, learning and development as a sector wanted to modernise in its approach, but due to pressures of time and workload, they never really had that opportunity to break out completely from the classroom. When COVID hit back in March 2020, a need had to, or a solution had to be found, because the actual demand around recruit training and mandatory training was still there, and yet they couldn't bring people into a classroom. So the pandemic almost forced L&D to take on that digital design and delivery. And I think as we move forward now, forces now want to use the tools available to create a modern blended L&D curriculum. So we've moved from the have to the want to. And with that particular focus on the productivity tools and the use of Microsoft 365, I've seen some really innovative ways of design and delivery of training. And if you look at all aspects of the training cycle, Force L&D departments have been able to create new ways of working to evaluate, design, deliver, and then measure the success of those programs. And those areas include from that delivery to creating trainer guides, use of Teams, breakout rooms, and SharePoint, and right the way through to creating whole digital learning academies, which for me, from an L&D point of view, is wonderful. And I think what we've been able to do within the NEP was to work with forces to help them to understand what they could achieve using the tools, and to help bring together the L&D teams and also bodies like the College of Policing and the NPCC L&D workstream, so they could all work together and learn from each other as to how they could use Microsoft 365 in their programs. I suppose my hope, and looking back on the reflection, is that as more and more forces start to access and use the tools, that progress and modernisation continues, all for the benefit of the learner, whose improved learning leads to better knowledge and delivery of business as usual and operational activity, which ultimately, why we're all here, leads to better support to the vulnerable and the victims of crime. So great activity within L&D. But David, I think as the reflection showed, the communications and engagement in particular have been called out as outstanding for this programme. What was different about the NEP comms approach, do you think?
I think, thanks, Mike. I think the point was when I joined the NEP, we had a really strong foundation, a fantastic base. We knew the product we were going to be delivering was phenomenal and would make a big difference to everybody in policing and frontline ever. But the challenge was about gaining traction in forces, so I took a proactive approach and transparent approach to reach as far more stakeholders than we probably were at the time. So the comms objective, the strategic comms objective, was to support the delivery of the NEP team and the achievement of the outcomes. But I actually saw three key ways the strategy could help that. So build and maintain the confidence of the senior leaders, both in policing and our elected leaders, PCCs, Home Office, etc. Help them understand the need to support the change and what benefits they would get out of that for the organisation and for the public. Support the change leads, making sure that they felt confident they could access everything that we could do and make sure there's no surprises, involve them as much as possible. And thirdly, to create a demand and expectation in forces at the front line so that colleagues would be asking and ready for the change and wanting to embrace all the technology that's there, because quite often with change programs, it's really hard to explain what's coming down the line and where they can get access to it, and creating that demand on change is better than creating a push to change that we wanted to do. And underpin that with making things real, making sure that we translated how the tools work from the manual into a policing setting, making them feel as that bringing in the experience of the huge NEP team who've got lots of experience around policing to actually translate the technology into this is the difference it makes in this scenario, and encourage people to move that round, making things real. And I think one of the phrases I used was make it art, move from art of the possible to art of the deliverable. Once the forces hit full rollout milestone, they had the technology to turn all this on. So this was deliverable. It wasn't something that was a future. So how do we make that language more real? And add that context around the security wrap of the National Management Centre in IAM. And you know, it just works securely and give people confidence to use the tools and push beyond teams to gain those real benefits out of the products. And there's a great deal more to do, and you know, this is where the PDS team are going to come in now, and we've picked up on lots of the things from the NEP, so the engagement approach is going to continue and actually improve with the way we do. So there's lots of engagement channels, and I would really encourage people to re-watch the video from last week where we introduced the new business engagement team, who will help to shape and to access things. Things are going to feel different. You know, Forces, the program has ended, so you won't have as much access to the text box as you've had during the delivery phase, but you know, this is how you'll access all the extra services. You can come through the business engagement team. There's a nice easy contact form on the platform that's already, and we've already seen a massive take up on that in the last couple of weeks without actually telling people it's there. So you'll use the business engagement team to access us and to get all the information that you need. Mike, is there anything you'd want to add from your point of view of the L&D and from being part of this transition programme over the last couple of years?
I think, as I mentioned at the end, my hope is that progress continues. I think looking at all aspects of the NEP, what we have been able to do is to deliver a new way of working, to help forces deliver a new way of working. The benefits that have come as a result of it, through whether it be cashable or non-cashable, the feel-good factor to someone who doesn't need to have to travel across the county to attend an event, through to the amount of money that is saved by forces as they look to embrace the use of the likes of Teams. I think it's all for the positive. Appreciate there are still challenges to overcome and areas of conversation to be had, but I think ultimately the more forces get to use this, the better that we will all be with regards to collaboration across borders, and ultimately deliver what you know, the members of the public want from us: a great, effective policing environment. So I think it's been a really enjoyable time for me. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with the L&D department, and I really hope that as we continue on with the journey, we see the benefits of new ways of working throughout.
Thanks. And I'll just come back to that final slide from Lisa, that, you know, I call this the temple slide. There's 3 pillars that underpin the credibility and trust we built, but that listening and acting, the proactive listening, isn't just a phrase. It's every time we had feedback, it was read, it was understood. We tried to interpret and take action. Wayne and I would often read the 140 comments that came back from the Chorley community view anonymised. We didn't know who said what, but to try and understand why people were saying things, so what we could do to change and address them, because if there was a concern there that was affecting our credibility or trust, we had to be seen then to listen and act on those with engagement by adapting the project approach, but most importantly with collaboration with the forces. So if there's any advice that reflections that come from the NEP, it is this pillars, you know, engagement, project approach and collaboration, underpinned with listening and acting and maintaining that trust and credibility with the stakeholders. It's no point achieving our objectives yet not achieving the objectives for the stakeholders, for the policing. And I think that's the big takeaway that we'd like to share on behalf of the programme. So thank you for joining us today. We hope that was found useful. The Enabling Centre is live, and we have the closure report available in 2 formats. You can join the Enabling Centre. If you haven't got access, just ping us, go to the PDS website, fill in the form, or it'll be, the link is in the chat. The full closure report is there, but we've also done a summary slide deck that's there to help with that. The operating model that Lisa mentioned will be coming soon onto the site as well. And here's a map in this slide here where you can find how to get hold of all the different services and fill in the contact form. So we do hope you can use that soon and keep in touch with us. Webinars are due back very, very soon. We are doing our next webinar on the 27th of April, hopefully with the National Management Centre, so that'll be a really good one for you to get involved in. And so keep an eye on the PDS events website, and we've got another one coming up straight after that with Microsoft, where we're looking at moving on from the fantastic work done in Derbyshire around intelligence and tasking, and how we can now use lists to move that forward. So webinars here to stay. Next one's in a few weeks' time after the Easter break. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for your support during the delivery of the National Enabling Programme.